Well, hello there. Another video on some MFL teaching reflections and an activity here that I'd like to share with you, hopefully give you some inspiration, or maybe it's just a dialogue on an activity you're already aware of. I certainly find it helpful when teachers touch on the same sort of activity in principle, the same format, but maybe they've used it in different contexts. Quick chat about used it with this topic, this subject, use it with these type of students. I needed to add in this little aspect because of X, Y, Z. That's always helpful. Again, it seems to be a theme of this classroom and this kind of video diary is the idea of digging deeper, getting more out of a resource or an activity. So this one is called a bad translation. This is again from Dr. Gianfranco Conti. And we've got in the middle, Duolingo. This obviously does not need to be restricted to Deutsch, to German, but Duolingo is just a fun little word that I use to describe the mixed language. Now, it's very, very simple. You've got one text, you've got the English translation. It's not low prep necessarily, because what you have to do is you need to mix those two together. You need to go through, I typically will start with the German, just because of accents, umlauts, the word order and stuff. And I would prefer that the native English speakers practice the German word order. So there's a little point. Maybe that's occurred to you or not. And I go through and I replace words with English. Now, this is a speaking activity, there's a listening activity, there's a reading activity, and ultimately there's a writing or typing activity. And the students are benefiting from all manner of input. I think teacher-led is helpful. I think student-led is important. Recorded audio, it might be helpful. You could also add certain aspects with a really high ability class. You're reading through the English and you deliberately don't pick out some of the German words, and they have to kind of, oh, sir, you missed out Deutsche. Oh, great, okay. And really, it's an opportunity for you as a teacher to use one main resource and really draw lots of things out of it. There's lots of interesting words in here that they probably would never come across, like Bergbaubetriebe and Stahl, steel. There are all sorts of industrial words that I just didn't come across in my GCSE and A-level. Industrieunternehmen, stuff like that. So this was quite well received. I think they were a little bit tired this morning, but they understand the objective. Again, I have, as a history resource, a bunch of texts, and I wanted to find a way to make my language teaching of Berlin incorporate history, which is so fascinating, and the story, the narrative of Germany, and Berlin specifically through time. But I also wanted to make sure that it was enjoyable for a linguist, so we're not just reading a text, highlight the vocab, translate the vocab. No, this is varied activities which are bringing the students on actually to learn and about history and develop the language. So I've said enough on that. I'm sure, and I hope you understand the principle behind that. But for me, that's been a lovely intersection with my teaching, because I do like history. I did it at uni as part of my languages degree, lots of history modules, and it's a really fun new challenge creating what is effectively a German history module, but making sure that the students, as they walk through it, are developing their German as well, that it's accessible. And I think that's a key reflection for me as a languages teacher, is we're trying to make something accessible. There's reflections on that of wider society. I've got my middle brother is very, very disabled, needed a wheelchair his whole life. And it's not, you just can't take for granted in many nations around the world that there's wheelchair access. Even in parts of the UK, still quite an enlightened, progressive country with, just recognition of disability, stuff like the Paralympics, and taking pride in being a society and local communities that make space for one another, and we try and be patient with one another's needs. I mean, that can obviously go to a negative extreme, but it's just been a reflection for me, weirdly, as an MFL teacher, as a languages teacher. I'm trying to create access for students of all abilities to knowledge, to a text, to a video, and that's our speciality, is trying to find a way to make the language the learning process one that is not too difficult. You know, it reminds me again of Stephen Krashen's X plus 1. X plus 2 is too stressful. X, we're just staying where we are. Like X plus minus 1, we obviously don't want to go backwards, but we're always trying to find X plus 1. And so parts of my lesson today, I needed to teach it in English. Other parts, I was able to do an introduction in German. Mixed code, you know, sometimes maybe they were like, what? And you repeat it in English and you repeat it back in German, and you just try and bring them on all of the time. And that can be quite difficult because at no point are the students really turning around and saying, yeah, I know this now, or I know X, Y, Z, and I still need to know ABC, you know. It would be really interesting, wouldn't it, if a student was like a computer app or a computer game and you knew exactly the progress they were making, where they were at. You know, certainly with sixth formers, sometimes they're just stumm, they don't talk. So yeah, that's been the activity. One of the activities today was bad translation, and yeah, I repeat myself, but I found it very important to have that speaking aspect, that listening, as the intro to it, getting the students to read, spotting things, parsing things, you know. So yeah, another really good bang for your buck activity, which you can really draw out for you know, more than several minutes, which you can also introduce as partner work. So I hope that helps. I hope that's of interest to you. Please, you know, like, share, subscribe, send me some comments. You know, let me know what you think. It's always nice to get some interaction, some other recommendations. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Bye bye.